Hello and welcome. My name is Martin Warner. I'm with Dual Citizenship for Austria, Doppelstaatsbürgerschaft für Österreich. This is an organization that's advocating for dual citizenship. We're happy if you support us. This talk today is about how to keep your Austrian citizenship when you apply for another citizenship. And it's in English. Normally we do things in German. Again, our initiative is non-partisan, not connected with any political party, not connected with any of the lawyers that as guests here. This is purely educational. We are happy to have you. And today our guest is Karl Arthur Alamosky. He's an attorney. He's also studied physics, and we are honored to have him here. He just got elected to the Austrian parliament. I think we'll have an interesting perspective also on the law and the policy side. So the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Hi, thank you, Martin, for the introduction. My introduction is quite straightforward. To keep your Austrian citizenship when you acquire a second citizenship, not by birth, but afterwards, you need to apply and you need to argue your grounds, which are stated in Section 28 of the Austrian citizenship law. And there are no loopholes to keep your citizenship if you haven't applied and if your application has not been granted. If you are an adult, there are loopholes if a child or an adolescent up to the age of 18 acquires a second citizenship after birth, depending on who specifically applies for that second citizenship for the child. So children up to 14, if someone applies for their second citizenship who is not their legal guardian, which is possible under Austrian law. For example, if the parents are not married and the father is not the legal guardian according to Austrian law, and the father applies for the second citizenship, this is a loophole because then the requirements of the Austrian citizenship law that the child would lose the citizenship are not met. And also, if the child is between 14 and 18, and one of the parents applies in the name of the child to acquire the second citizenship, and the child does not also sign the application, then the child would also not lose the citizenship. But those are only loopholes for children and not for adults. Similar requirements apply if an adult applies for a second citizenship and has children below 18. There are cases where they not lose their Austrian citizenship if they get the second citizenship together with their parent. Also, if they're between 14 and 18 and do not also co-sign the parent's application for the second citizenship. So, and from here, basically, it's question time, I think.
Yeah, thank you. Can you just explain in general what is the Austrian citizenship law? What does it say? Because a lot of people, I think, they don't know anything about how it works. Like in a lot of other countries, they just allow dual citizenship without anything. What is the main framework that Austria has in regards to dual citizenship?
All right. The Austrian citizenship law is not concerned about dual citizenship by birth. For example, if the parents have different citizenships, or if someone is born in a country which has use solely, for example, the United States, then the Austrian state has no problem with dual citizenship. But acquirement of a second citizenship after birth is very restrictive in Austria. Austria is one of only a handful of European states which is that restrictive. I think it's only Norway and the Netherlands which are also that restrictive. The acquirement of a second citizenship after birth by an Austrian citizen is only possible if you apply to keep your Austrian citizenship before, and this application is granted before you acquire the second citizenship. Afterwards, you ex lege lose your Austrian citizenship if you acquire a second one after birth. And the application has to be based on certain grounds stated in the Austrian citizenship law. It is easier for children below 18 because the grounds are only welfare of the child. For example, if the parents have different citizenship or if the child lives in the other country. So this is relatively easy, but for adults it is quite difficult because apart from celebrity status, the level that you have to prove that it is in the interest of the Austrian states that you still be an Austrian citizen, even if you are disloyal in acquiring a second citizenship, a level is quite high.
How does one apply for keeping a second citizenship? What do you need to do?
Yeah, well, you need to apply to the Austrian authorities, which is either a consulate or the authorities in Austria, which is the regional councils, the Landesregierung, and you have to prove your worth. You have to lay out the grounds why it is not only in your own personal interest, but also in the interests of the Austrian state that you keep the Austrian citizenship. For example, if you're a renowned scientist, or I don't know, Martin, you.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, Arnold Schwarzenegger. This is celebrities. But this is also an example, yeah.
So in general, I mean, there are two reasons, right, to apply. You can say it's in the interest of the Republic, or you can say it's for personal reasons, for specific personal reasons that you should get it granted.
Yeah.
What is the difference there?
Well, the specific personal reasons are family life. For example, if you live in a foreign country and you wouldn't be allowed, for example, to buy a family home if you don't take the citizenship of the other country. And also, you have to argue why you need to keep your Austrian citizenship, for example, because you need to get back to Austria and visit your parents regularly.
And do you need a lawyer to make this application? Can you do it without a lawyer? What is it? How does it work?
Formally,
and if you do it with a lawyer, what is the cost? So do people know about that?
Yeah, well, formally you do not need a lawyer, but it might help. There are specialized lawyers. You might have read in the Facebook group. There's a couple of lawyers who do this thing regularly. I do not do this regularly. My approach is from the legal side, from the parliamentary side, changing the laws to make it easier, and maybe in future also changing the practice of the authorities, because my party, representative of my party, is now in charge of the council section in Vienna regarding citizenship. So maybe it will not be that restrictive within the next 5 years in Vienna. The costs, you might have also read in the Facebook group, are a couple of €1,000.
What is the length? How much time does it take to get this done usually?
It can take a year or a year and a half if the questions and answers go back and forth, and your application maybe raises questions which have to be answered, and then the file maybe is not the only file that the civil servant works on. So it is not over in a couple of months. So you need to take into account when you apply for the other citizenship that the Austrian application might take a year or year and a half if you're not lucky.
Are there specific guidelines that the government provides, or is it all just nebulous?
It is quite nebulous. You can maybe read into prejudice, like court cases of the Austrian highest administrative court, people who whose applications were not granted and then went to court about it. But the Austrian authorities are not really helpful in making suggestions in what you should write into your application.
What is the reason Austria is so much against it? What is the political status about this?
Well, the political status in parliament is that Austria's largest party, the People's Party, the Volkspartei, which is a Christian Democrat / conservative party, who have been part of coalition governments since 1986 in Austria. They are restrictive. They don't want any change in the citizenship law, and their speaker for constitutional affairs, Wolfgang Gerstl, if you ask him why, he says, well, it's disloyal to Austria if you take on another citizenship. So it's not in the interest of the Austrian state that someone takes on other citizenship.
Is there a prospect this is going to change, or it depends on who is in charge in parliament, or is there other trends that we can look at?
Yeah, right now this party, the People's Party, are in national government together with the Green Party, who are also quite liberal concerning dual citizenship. But as far as I can remember, they were not able to get in a foot in the coalition agreement regarding liberalization of dual citizenships. So it may hinge on the people in charge in the People's Party for those matters.
Can you tell a little bit about this new law for descendants of Holocaust survivors? Yes. And what it means, and how people who might just got their Austrian citizenship back now be affected by the Austrian law?
Yeah, this I can talk about because I was involved in the drafting of this bill. I'm very glad that it was then passed unanimously in Austrian Parliament. Before that, only people who were persecuted themselves were able to apply. In fact, it was not really an application to get Austrian citizenship. It was a declaration to kind of reacquire Austrian citizenship. So did not need any arguments, no specific grounds. You just need to declare that you have been persecuted and you had been an Austrian citizen before, and you lost your Austrian citizenship since, for example, because you were naturalized in the country that you fled to. And by this declaration, you got the Austrian citizenship back. But this only applied to the people who were persecuted themselves, the Holocaust victims, for example. Well, not victims being Holocaust persecuted. And now this law has been expanded to also cover descendants of people who had been persecuted. Any generation of descendants, so children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. And now they can declare that they are descendants of former Austrian citizens who lost their Austrian citizenship because they were persecuted and fled the country and were naturalized somewhere else. So this is also a declaration which only needs to state this fact, and you need to prove that you are a descendant. And if you don't have all the documents, then you will be helped by the so-called Dokumentationsarchiv des österreichischen Widerstands, for example, and other Austrian NGOs for Holocaust victims and survivors. And also this is free of charge. And you need to submit this declaration with as many documents that you might have, for example, the birth certificates. And if you have a former Austrian passport, for example, of your ancestor, to either your Austrian embassy or to the regional authorities within Austria, for example, in Vienna.
And those people can keep their citizenship, their other citizenships, when they get their Austrian citizenship.
Yes, they specifically are allowed to be dual citizens if they acquire or reacquire Austrian citizenship in this way.
And if those people that take another citizenship afterwards, will they lose their Austrian citizenship? Or can
yes.
they get it, or how does it work?
You can only acquire Austrian citizenship by declaration once. So if you acquire the Austrian citizenship in this way, and then in 5 years' time move to, I don't know, Australia, and want to be naturalized in Australia, then you would lose your Austrian citizenship if you cannot prove by application that it is in the interest of the Austrian state and to avoid personal hardship, that you would be allowed to keep the Austrian citizenship.
Gotcha. Okay, so if you have the Austrian citizenship, no matter how you got it, you have to apply first to get an approval to take another citizenship. Yes. And it's not gonna, and even the new law for Holocaust descendants doesn't help you if you're not going to get the Austrian citizenship back if you lose it once.
That's correct. This new law helps you in acquiring or reacquiring Austrian citizenship, but it does not help you to keep your Austrian citizenship if you would lose it afterwards.
What a lot of people ask about Brexit, and I think there was a former foreign minister of Austria that said Austria is going to help the people who live in the United Kingdom. What is the situation there? Do you know anything about that? I'm going through the questions, by the way, so people keep posting in the chat, and I'm writing them down and I'm asking them.
Yeah, a couple of years ago there was talk of making specific requirements in Austrian citizenship law for Brexit, but as far as I can tell, none were made. So all the regular requirements apply. I expect that it depends on the possible treaty. If there is a Brexit treaty by the end of the year, which is the deadline, if something is included in that treaty. So if it's a hard Brexit or not. If it turns out to be hard Brexit without any treaty, for example, treaty with provisions for EU citizens living in the UK that they still enjoy most of the rights that they might have had within the Union. So if there is no treaty with such provisions, then I guess the practice of the Austrian authorities would be to be generous, allowing people who apply for dual citizenship because of Brexit that they might be able to keep their Austrian citizenship, because it would be special hardship for them to lose it when they apply for the UK citizenship.
Gotcha. There's one question that came. Why is this in English? I should have mentioned this at the beginning. Why do we doing this in English? Everybody in Austria speaks German. That's correct. Most people speak German in Austria, but there have been a lot of people, especially through the new Holocaust Descendants law and other ways, that people don't speak German, and they also would like to know about this law. This is why we're doing it. Most of our talks and everything are in German, but this one is in English. So thank you everyone for that. Anyway, let's move on with the questions. We're going to jump around a lot in terms of the topics, because it's just easier for me to keep this way, to do it this way with the questions today. So one of the questions that came is, why are you an Irish Austrian citizen? Why can you keep?
Yeah,
why are you a dual citizen?
I'm a dual citizen by birth. My father is Austrian, was Austrian, and my mother is Irish. So both citizenships were passed on to me by birth.
So that's probably the biggest case why people are dual citizens in Austria.
Yes.
Austria allows dual citizenship in this regard. It just doesn't allow it to acquire another one.
After birth, yeah.
Yeah, after birth. People ask about what are successful examples of how normal people get the dual citizenship. You mentioned celebrities, and that makes sense for people, but yeah. I mean, everybody knows a lot of people who are dual citizenship who got it somehow. Can you go a little bit more into specifics? What are potential examples of why people can acquire others?
You can read success stories in your Facebook group. People have posted some. Mostly it has to do about family life, work reasons, being able to keep your job only if you take on the citizenship of your the country where you now live in, and that you also still have a special bond to Austria, that you need to keep your Austrian citizenship, that it was special hardship to lose your Austrian citizenship because, for example, you've got property in Austria, or you've got family in Austria which you regularly need to visit, especially if it's elderly parents, for example. Sometimes it's if you're very, very successful in your job. Sometimes it's about being very engaged in social work, or in associations, or in Austrian friendship societies abroad. That might help. Austrian career networks abroad, commerce networks abroad. So if you're planning to acquire a second citizenship in a couple of years, several years time. So if it's not very pressing, you can help your own case by preparing for that.
The next question, I think you mentioned this earlier already. Basically, is there a list of lawyers? Yes, again, we are not affiliated with any of the lawyers that we have as our guests, like you, or we had Balázs Eszter a few months ago. We have lists of lawyers on our website. So if you are interested, those are people that came recommended, but we are not affiliated with anyone. So reach out to the lawyer of your choice. And it's the same with political parties. You're, Carl, also part of a political party in Austria, but our organization is not, it's apolitical. We just want dual citizenship for everyone. Next question that came, can we sue Austria about this law? Is there a way to change the law by suing?
No, sorry, not. Straight answer.
So Austria has the right to make those laws and restrict dual citizenship for citizens, even though it's unfair.
Yes.
Next question.
There was one case, European Court, about if it can be a special hardship to automatically lose the Austrian citizenship because the Austrian citizenship is part of the European Union citizenship. You might have read about that case, or I think it was also in your Facebook group was a topic. If losing the Austrian citizenship would also mean that you're no longer a member of, no longer a citizen of the European Union, then the Austrian authorities especially have to look into this case to make sure that it is not a special hardship for the applicant. So this does not apply if you acquire a second citizenship from another European Union country, but it would apply if you apply for US citizenship, for example, because then you would no longer be a European Union citizen.
And that's something that was in the courts recently, right? Like a year
that
ago.
was in the court within the last year, so it's a new development.
But the law hasn't changed because of that.
The law specifically has not changed, yeah. But the authorities
does Austria need to change the law, or how does it?
No, it does not have to.
Yeah,
Austria does not need to change the citizenship law, but it when it evaluates the grounds that you state in your application why it is in the state's interest and why it is in your interest and why it would be a special hardship to lose citizenship, then this is a part of the evaluation which is in favor of the applicant. And this is new because of this court decision.
Gotcha. Something that's connected is there a way to appeal if you get a negative
yes,
result?
you can appeal. You can appeal, and you can. It's called a Landesverwaltungsgericht, which is an administrative court, and then you might also able to appeal a second time to the federal Supreme Administrative Court, or maybe the Constitutional Court if any constitutional rights are infringed.
I mean, people asking why. So you mentioned that you have to apply in a certain state. It depends on which state you're affiliated with that you have to apply. How is it fair that the states can have different standards or do it in different ways? And how is it fair that maybe people who get it through the Holocaust descendant law, they can have the dual citizenship, or people who are born with it, they can have?
It's not about fairness. It's in the disposition of of the Austrian Parliament to draft the citizenship law. Nothing you can do about it except either change the law or wait for favorable court decisions.
People also ask, you mentioned that NEOS is going to be in charge of the Viennese
Yes.
side of the kind of the kind of administration that's in charge of allowing dual citizenships in Vienna. And I know this organization is also responsible for everyone who is born outside of Austria.
Yes.
So everyone from Vienna or born outside of Austria.
So this is the majority of people applying for
this organization. What does that mean? What does that
without getting ahead of ourselves, there might be changes in the practice of allowing keeping the Austrian citizenship. Might not be as restrictive as it has been before. This administrative section was headed by the Social Democrats, which are also not against dual citizenships. But maybe that was not one of their political focus points. I don't know. So
okay, so
there might be a bit of liberalization.
People ask, has NEOS made any official statements about this, or is this?
Well, yeah, NEOS has submitted drafts to change the citizenship law in this respect, to strike this section of the citizenship law that you lose the Austrian citizenship if you acquire another one, and vice versa, that you need to renounce your previous citizenship if you acquire the Austrian citizenship.
Well, what I'm reading here, what are the costs that associated from an administrative point of view to get the, like, not the lawyer costs, but like what does the government want?
Yeah, you mean for the application to keep Austrian citizenship?
Yeah, application fee. I think people asking what.
I don't know. I don't know.
I think they're a few $100s. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
a few €100.
It's a 3-digit amount. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also there was a question about the cost for an appeal.
Yes.
This is also a couple of €1,000 for the appeal. So probably the same costs or the same ballpark as the costs for the application itself if you have a lawyer.
What about military service? How is that affected if you have multiple citizenships?
If you're of multiple citizenships, then military service does not, in one of those countries, does not lead to loss of the citizenship of any of those countries. Military service for a country which you do not have citizenship of, for example, the French Foreign Legion, leads to an automatic loss of the Austrian citizenship.
So if you, an Austrian citizen, and you maybe have other citizenships too, but you have an Austrian citizen and you join the French Legion because you're not French, then you because you cannot join another army as an Austrian.
Yes, that's correct. If you
if
join
you
another
are,
army, then you lose the Austrian citizenship, except if it's a national service for the army of a country which you already have dual citizenship of.
But you have to serve in the, if you live abroad, you have an Austrian citizenship, you're maybe born to Austrian parents living abroad, do you have to serve in the Austrian military?
You only have to serve in the Austrian,
a boy.
Yeah, you only have to serve in the Austrian military if you live in Austria. If you
Okay.
are an Austrian citizen and you live abroad, then you're not ordered to travel to Austria to enter national service.
Gotcha. So I think, let me see, I'm gonna try to scroll through the questions. If somebody hasn't had, please repost because there are a lot of questions. And
there's one question because in the media, dual citizenship or naturalization questions in Austria are mainly centered around Turkish dual citizens. There might be a way to loosen the restrictions just within the European Union. For example, that you get to keep your Austrian citizenship if you acquire another European Union citizenship. That would be also a step in the right direction. But even this has so far not been successful because the Austrian far-right party, who are now in opposition, the Freiheitliche Partei, the Freedom Party, they are against it anyway. And the Conservative Party, the People's Party, they're also not moving. Even if you kind of try to sweeten the deal and tell them, well, you're a pro-European party, yeah, but just for starters, allowing European Union citizens to be dual citizens, they're against that. Only thing that they made a parliamentary, well, not a parliamentary motion that they had in a coalition agreement a couple of years ago was South Tyrol, so former Austrian territory. They would have allowed dual citizenship Italy and Austria for so-called ethnic Austrians being having grown up in Südtirol, South Tyrol. But this also has not shown any progress because it's quite difficult and very sensitive topic.
So somebody asked, can you repeat what are the loopholes for children? You mentioned it's easier for children. I mean, we talked about if you're born, if your parents are Austrian citizens, then you get, or have multiple citizenships, then you get all those citizenships by birth, potentially. I know there's some nuances as well, depending on if you get it at birth or if you have to apply for it afterwards. But what are kind of the main loopholes in the sense of like the ways to get dual citizenship for children? Yeah,
well, there is a specific section in the citizenship law that that if an application is made on behalf of a child to acquire a second citizenship after birth, then you only need to argue that it is in the interest of the child's welfare. So no special hardship has to be proven, and this interest in the interest of the child's welfare usually is seen when the child is living abroad, or if the parents have another citizenship, which by some way or the other has not passed on to the child so far. So this is not really a loophole because it's a specific reason in the citizenship law. The loopholes that I mentioned is that automatic loss of Austrian citizenship when acquiring another citizenship after birth applied to minors up to 18 years has further requirements. So this automatic loss only happens if this application is made by the legal guardian of the child, which can be it can happen that the unmarried father of the child is not regarded as a legal guardian under Austrian law. So this might be a loophole if the parents are not married and the mother is Austrian, so the child is Austrian by birth, and the father has a different citizenship, and the father makes the application to the authorities of the other country, and the father has no, under Austrian law, does not have custody for the child, is not regarded as the legal guardian of the child, then the child does not lose Austrian citizenship by acquisition of a foreign citizenship. This is one case, and the other case is a minor who is 14 years or older, so between 14 and 18, only loses the Austrian citizenship when acquiring another citizenship if he or she co-signs the application for the foreign citizenship or makes any specific declaration that that he agrees to that application.
So if your parents sign you up for another citizenship, then there's a way to keep it, because you as a child make decision. But is that forward, or does it need? You still need to apply for the, or how does it?
Yes. If the parents sign the child up for another citizenship, and the child who is 14 or older is not asked, or it cannot be proved that he was asked because there is no signature, then that child does not lose the Austrian citizenship.
Okay. There's one question coming. Does it help if I own property? I don't think that helps. In general, I mean, does it help to own property?
Yeah, it might help if you own property, because then it might help if you need to acquire, if you need to buy property in the country where you want to take on the other citizenship, and you can only buy property in this country if you're a citizen of that country. And so this is a reason why you can argue that it is really necessary that you take on the other citizenship. And if you have property in Austria, you can argue that you need to keep your Austrian citizenship because you need to regularly come back to Austria to check on your property.
Okay. So can people and organizations support the cause for dual citizenship in Austria? Like, what can they send a letter? Like somebody was asking an organization they represent, how can they lobby for this cause? I mean, I want to say something for myself real quick. Like, we have this organization, Dual Citizenship. I think that would be a big help. But I think the question is also for you as someone who's involved in politics. What are ways for helping the cause?
Yeah, basically lobbying with the ÖVP, with the People's Party, who have been in the way of a change of the citizenship law.
Gotcha. This is a good question. I really like it. I didn't think about it. So I know if you get the Austrian citizenship, if you acquire it, you're not born with it, then not every, you actually cannot apply for another dual citizenship, at least not for the special circumstances category. You can do it for the interest of the republic category, but you can't do it for I guess it depends if you're born with an Austrian citizenship, if you're naturally born Austrian, or if you're naturalized, in terms of what options you have in terms of applying for another citizenship. What does that mean for people who get it through the Holocaust Descendants law? Do they have to apply for interest of the republic and for special personal reasons, or is it only for interest of the republic, like for people who have been naturalized?
Well, the law doesn't make any difference. So if somebody plans to acquire the Austrian citizenship by the Holocaust Descendants law and acquire another, so maybe third citizenship, then I suggest to do it in the other the other way around. That you first acquire the second foreign citizenship, and when you've got all your other citizenships in place, then you declare that you'll take Austrian citizenship from the Holocaust Descendants law. Because there's a question in the chat about if it makes a difference if the Holocaust survivors left Austria before March 38. The time period in the Austrian citizenship law does not start in March 38. It just makes a cutoff in. It needs to be before May 1955. So it could have been that the ancestors fled Austria before March 38.
Somebody asked about military service. If you already served in the military and then you take the Austrian citizenship, but you're still not 35, and then you move to Austria, do you have to again serve in the Austrian military? Do you have to serve military service twice in a sense?
Your previous military service is counted towards your Austrian military service. So if the other national service was shorter than the Austrian one, you only need to serve the difference. So Austrian military service right now is 6 months. So if your other military service was shorter than 6 months, you need to serve the difference.
Gotcha. People ask again about the Brexit, just to
Brexit.
Nothing planned.
They
need to wait until the final agreement comes up.
They probably have a plan in their drawers if there is hard Brexit, but nothing's. You can't say anything specific before the end of the year.
Gotcha. What when applying? So is there anything you mentioned already, but does it go talk to the Austrian? Does it join certain organizations? I mean, we mentioned joining like organizations abroad that do something for Austria, like those Austrian associations abroad. Any other things that can
Austrian Scientist Network
citizenship easier? Austrian Scientist Network. So anything that's kind of connecting you to Austria, and that the Austrian authorities deem as kind of representative of the interest of the Republic, right? Something that's connecting you.
Yes. Something which sort of proves that you're connected to Austria.
Okay, going to the questions. Okay, how do you argue the interest of the child in the absence of hard facts within the European countries? I find it hard to argue why it would be in the interest of Austria to approve the dual citizenship, as there are no tangible disadvantage for my children in the host country. So I guess it's a good question. So if you live in the European Union, taking on a citizenship of another European Union country, how can you argue that you really need it when there's anyway a kind of a common market and the Schengen agreement and freedom? Is it harder to get a European citizen, another European citizenship versus a third country?
Yes, actually it is. Because there's not a lot, of course, there isn't allowed to be a lot of difference between treatment of Austrian citizens and other European Union citizens. Only difference is right to vote, basically.
And right to vote is not something that Austria deems as essential. Like you cannot argue, I don't have the right to vote, so I need a dual citizenship. You need more than that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I think we're.
Yeah. When a married woman gets Austrian citizenship, you not need to take her husband's name.
Okay. Yeah. So I skipped over that. I wasn't sure if that's applicable here. I wanted to see, if you don't mind, Karl, I see there is Balázs Eszter in the audience. We did a talk with him recently, and I'm not sure if he's up for it, but he wrote actually a book on the citizenship law as well. So if you don't mind, you can maybe ask him if there's anything he would like to add as well.
I'd be happy to switch over because my time slot is ending soon anyway.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. I'm sorry, I did not want to bomb this session, so I just was
No. We're very happy you're here.
But I was, of course, interested what another lawyer and who is familiar with the politics issues as well would say about this topic. So basically, I just wanted to get some brainstorming for myself.
Yeah. So just context: Balázs Eszter is a lawyer. He's full-time lawyer, not also a politician like full plate like Karl Arthur has. But Balázs is very knowledgeable in citizenship law, probably one of the most knowledgeable people in Austria, because he wrote a book on it with colleagues, and the authorities use that. Balázs, you listened to our session. I mean, we answered a lot of questions. Is there anything you would like to add or anything you would like to say to the audience about the citizenship, dual citizenship situation?
Well, I think most of the very interesting topics have been mentioned, and Karl Arthur has pointed out many interesting facts and the legal situation and the legal background. So I'm happy to answer any question if you don't mind, but I don't know what to say additionally because I think everything was covered very well.
And Karl Arthur, you mentioned that maybe your time slot is anyway coming to an end. You have a busy schedule, so thank you so much. Maybe in this way we can answer a few more questions with Balázs, and we say thank you so much for joining us. Good luck for your work as member of parliament, and we really appreciate you taking your time.
Thank you for having me. I'm also monitoring the Facebook group, so sometimes I'm able to answer some questions there.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye. All the best.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. Okay, so I'm moving on here. So were some questions that I want to go back to. Okay. If my 24-year-old daughter gets the citizenship through a Holocaust option, would she be eligible to study in Austria and receive student benefits? I think so, but we need to stay at the kind of the dual citizenship situations here.
Well, maybe one thing I would like to clarify. From the Austrian law's view, there is no dual citizenship or multiple citizenship. There is only an Austrian citizenship or a foreign citizenship. So basically, the Austrian law does not really care if you have one or two or three other citizenships beside the Austrian one. As Karl Arthur mentioned already, the possibilities are very restrictive. So the chance that you might get even one additional citizenship are not really high. But there is the word dual citizenship or multiple citizenship is not mentioned at any point in the Austrian Citizenship Act. So basically, if you are a citizen of Austria and another country, so you have dual citizenship, then from the Austrian point of view, you are Austrian citizen, regardless if you are also citizen of another country, possibly, and therefore you have the full rights of an Austrian citizen. So you are allowed to travel to Austria, to remain in Austria, to buy property in Austria, to work in Austria, or to study in Austria, just as any other citizen.
You are doing a lot of applications for dual citizenship for people. Can you maybe talk a little bit more in detail? How does the process work when you apply? How long does it take? What kind of success stories you saw in your clients, and what kind of pitfalls to avoid? Things like this.
Well, basically, I would say that the time period that Karl Arthur mentioned was maybe a little too long. My experience is that most applications for maintenance of the citizenship will be processed within 4 to 6 months. So basically, that's the time period that I experienced in most cases. There might even take longer if it's very complicated and you have to send the authorities additional documents or something else. But basically, in a normal case, you would get a reply from the authority within 4 to 6 months. It should be this way because there is an administrative regulation in the Austrian administrative procedure law that says every administrative procedure has to be finished within 6 months. So it should not take longer. What often really takes longer is the application for the Austrian citizenship, but mostly only in Vienna. So let's hope that the participation of the NEOs in the Vienna government in the future will really help to solve this issue and make the applications even in Vienna become faster.
The kind of people that you help applying for dual citizenship, what are some examples of successful cases in general? I mean, what do you see that helps them? What do you see that is just a common question that you have to tell them, you know what, I don't think that's enough?
Well, basically, I have a lot of meetings and discussions and appointments where I have a consultation with people who would like to maintain their Austrian citizenship, and I'm trying to hear their story and hear their grounds and their reasons and their circumstances in their everyday life and family situation and work situation. So I'm trying to get a picture of their situation so that I can try to tell them if I believe that the application has any chance to be approved or not. Of course, it's not always hard, or it's not always easy to tell it in advance because I'm not the one who will make the decision. I'm the lawyer who will assist them in the process. But out of my experience with this topic, probably I can, in many cases, determine if it will be sufficient or not. And if not, then I would tell it to the clients honestly, because it's really not necessary to carry out administrative proceedings if you can see that you don't have a chance for a positive decision.
There are multiple questions about what are the differences between the different Bundesländer, the different states. Is one more liberal and more stricter? Do you see any differences there and handle from different states?
Well, if you read the stories and the experiences in your Facebook group, then this question is present there, and many people have different experiences with different territories in Austria. Personally, I can't really say that it's better or worse in one country or one territory or the other. The law is the same for everyone, and the administrative procedure should be carried out the same way. I can't really say that it's harder in Vienna than somewhere else. Probably it takes longer in Vienna. This is an experience that I had made.
Somebody asked, I think you mentioned this kind of earlier, how is the status of dual citizenship related to issues such as social security, retirement? I mean, you mentioned that everybody's an Austrian, even if they're a dual citizen, and maybe you can just say, if you know anything about this, maybe say something. I'm not sure if this is falling into your field.
Well, I'm not an expert in social insurance law, luckily, because it's obviously one of the most complicated sections in law, I think, at all. But as far as I know, social insurance and social security systems in the European Union are not based on the citizenship. Because if you, for example, if you work in Austria, even as a foreign citizen, then you make the contributions, the payments into the social care system, and after some period of time, which should be in the minimum 180 months, where you have paid into the social security system, after that you would get back a retirement or a pension or something like that. So that should not depend on the citizenship.
This would have been also a good question for Karl Arthur, but maybe many of us, including me, don't live in Austria right now. It's how was the new Holocaust Descendants law passed in Parliament perceived by the Austrian general public? So this is not so much a legal question, but maybe something that, what are your impressions of reading and talking with people? What do you feel about that? I think it's a good question, but not a legal question.
Yeah. Well, I picked up some mindsets and some comments in public forum and discussion meetings and things like that. The problem, I think, is that the regulation is open for every descendant without any generation limit. That is something I would have asked Karl Arthur, but it's gone already, because the first idea was to limit it to the third generation. And the law that was passed does not have any limit at all. So basically, the great-great-great-grandchildren of an ancestor who was Austrian citizen during the Second World War and who fled from the prosecution could also become Austrian citizen on this basis, even though that he or she has no ties to Austria and no personal experience or personal grantings to Austria. And somehow I think that this sounds unfair for many people, even more because they are dual citizens, or they can be dual citizens, so they become Austrian citizens and don't need to give up their former citizenship. And therefore, this is somehow a topic that is very sensitive, I think. Because on one hand, if you want to become Austrian on a regular basis, so by granting the citizenship, you need to give up your former citizenship. So there is no way to maintain this and to become a dual citizen. On the other hand, if you are Austrian citizen and want to become citizen of a foreign country, you will lose your Austrian citizenship unless you get the special permit we are talking about. But it's very restrictive. So basically, also there is no really way to be, or a very convenient way to become dual citizen. But for the descendants, the way is open, and probably this is something I would rethink again.
So, I mean, what I hear out here's also the legal point of view. The whole citizenship laws have become very messy, and lots of exceptions have been added, and there's probably a need for some reform anyway, with what Karl Arthur was asked earlier about the EU citizenship law, that the EU court case that Austria's current law is not in accordance with EU law. Can I say it like this? That basically if somebody loses their Austrian citizenship, rights to live in other EU countries, and that might be a reason why the current Austrian law is not very not conform with EU regulation. Bottom line, it sounds like there's a lot of messiness in the citizenship laws that needs to be cleaned up. Is that a fair assessment?
I think yes. The point is that, as Karl Arthur already mentioned, special parties or some parties who are in the government or have been in the government for a very long time, like the People's Party, obviously are not very interested in making dual citizenships available or making big changes in the citizenship law. So recently there has not been any great novel or change in the Citizenship Act, and I think this is the point. The law itself has been made in the 60s, actually, 1965, basically, and has, of course, changed during the time, but only in some points. And I think in a modern society that is very open-minded and globalized somehow, so people are traveling much more nowadays than they did in the 1960s. And we are part of the European Union, where there is free travel and free residence and a special European citizenship. Somehow I think it would be an idea to think about all these things and to get a brainstorming if the Citizenship Act is still on time or up to date, and if you can somehow find new regulations that fit the modern living in a better way.
I would like to add also just to the question earlier about how the public received the Holocaust Descendants law. I think most people didn't notice it much, and generally it was passed in parliament by all parties from very left to very right. So I think most people generally support the law, and it wasn't controversial in any way. And I think it's just generally positively perceived. And I think the technicalities of how many generations and things like this, I don't think the general public debated about it. I think my impression from reading the newspapers, basically, because I wasn't in Austria this year, was that most people either don't even know it changed, or they're generally okay with it.
Yes, I think it was not a big story, so it was not a big public discussion about this topic.
Yeah. So somebody asked, so how can we get the Austrian People's Party, the ÖVP, to take an interest in dual citizenships? Yeah, how can you lobby? I think, yeah, write to them, call them. Get in.
I think one of the problems.
In others, what else do you think?
One of the problems actually regarding dual citizenship is that the term dual citizenship has two aspects. One is the question if somebody who wants to become Austrian citizen should be allowed to maintain his former citizenship or not. The other question is if somebody is Austrian already and is living abroad and wants to pick up the citizenship of that country where he is living, he should lose the Austrian one or not. Actually, in my point of view, these are, of course, dual citizenships in both cases, but there are different aspects of the same topic, probably, or actually there are two different topics. Because I can understand somehow if the Austrian law is restrictive with granting the Austrian citizenship and says, okay, if you want to become Austrian, then you need to be only Austrian. So there is no conflict of interest with other countries or somehow. I can understand that. But to make life harder for their own citizens who are living outside of the country, I think that in this special topic, there could be some change. But the problem is that the term dual citizenship is very negative in the public media. So you always hear stories like in Austria, dual citizenship is illegal, which is of course not the point or not correct. And I think that by mixing these different topics, it becomes very sensitive and very complicated for any party to make any change and to make it clear to their voters that these are two different things. Because if any party, any conservative party especially, would say, okay, we will open the citizenship law for dual citizenship, and would mean only for the Austrians who would become foreign citizens, then the media would of course pick it up and say, okay, now the Turkish people can be Turkish and Austrian, and they will be granted the Austrian citizenship, and they can still be Turkish and vote for Erdogan and things like that. So I think one of the big problems is the communication in the media. And I think that this is also one of the reasons why the conservative parties are not very open for a discussion about these things.
Back to some more technicalities, and by the way, tell us whenever you have to go. We kind of hijacked you there into a video. It's like an online an online hijacking that took place. So you tell us how much time you have, please. Somebody asked, has it become easier or harder lately to get the permission for dual citizenship?
Honestly,
lately meaning probably the last 10 years or like whatever time period you can look at.
Honestly, I really can't tell. I am an attorney since 2014. I've been working with citizenship law since around 2011. During this time, I can't say that it has changed a lot. Probably it was easier back in the 1990s, but I have no experience with that.
So another sensitive timing issue. Do you have to get the approval? When do you have to get the approval? When you apply for another citizenship, or when you obtain it, meaning when you start the process of applying, or when you actually kind of become another citizen? At what point should you get the approval? I think that's something we haven't touched yet, how long that approval is valid, and that could be an issue too.
Okay. The point is that you will lose your Austrian citizenship if you become citizen of another country, unless you have the permit to maintain the Austrian citizenship. This means that you need to have the permit, meaning you need to have the paper physically in your hand, actually, on the day you become citizen of the foreign country. Not necessarily on the day when you make the application, but of course, take into consideration that once you place an application for a citizenship, maybe you cannot stop it anymore, or you don't have the control over the proceeding and can't really say when it will be finished. So I would recommend not to start before you don't have the approval, so the permit from the Austrian authority. But to be very correct, you would need it on the day before you become citizen of the foreign country.
And that approval is valid only for 2 years, right?
Yeah, that's the second time issue. If you get this positive approval, then you have 2 years to effectively become citizen of the foreign country. After the 2 years, the approval is invalid, becomes invalid.
Great. Are there any other questions? Otherwise, I would say we're over time a little bit. Usually we try to do it within an hour. Thank you, Balázs, for stepping in here and answering so much more questions. I think it's great. Both Karl Arthur, Balázs, and other people that we recommend in the group have been super helpful and supportive to us. So if you do want to speak with a lawyer, which we generally recommend, again, you can do it without one, but we generally recommend it. I think they are great choices. Yeah, thank you, everyone. If there are more questions, just join the Facebook group. There are multiple lawyers, including Balázs, in the group who always volunteers to answer questions. And so more questions, just put it in there in English, in German. Everything works. Thank you, everyone.
Very good. Have a nice
Goodbye.
evening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.